If convicted, Baldwin faces up to 18 months in prison. Josh Ritter, host of the new podcast Courtroom Confidential, joins me now. He's also a criminal defense attorney. Josh, good morning. Let's chat about this jury selection here. How difficult do you think it's going to be to find an impartial jury, a jury that doesn't know anything about this high-profile case or Alec Baldwin?
In that smaller community where the shooting took place, it's probably going to be very difficult to find anyone who doesn't know anything about the case. I'm sure they've all been talking about it. But as far as finding people who haven't already made a determination about it or bring a biases into the case, that might prove to be a little more of a task that they could accomplish, because I think you'll find even in these cases, we follow it so closely in the legal community and on the news. Everyone's been following this so closely, but a lot of folks, they're more concerned with their kids' little league team or entertainment news, and they're not as concerned with a case like this. So they probably have heard of it. They probably know about it. They probably know who Alec Baldwin is, but I think they'll be able to find jurors who haven't already made prejudgments about the case.
Fair enough. Alec Baldwin's defense got a big win this week when the judge ruled that Baldwin's role as co-producer is not relevant to the trial. A win for Baldwin's team, some would say, but probably damaging for the prosecution. What other evidence do you expect them to introduce to really rely on for their case?
Yeah, I think that was a big win for the defense, because much of the prosecution's case has to do with his responsibility. This case is really about responsibility and foreseeability. And they're trying to say that because he had a larger role as a producer, he had some sort of higher responsibility on that set. They're not going to be able to make that same argument now. But the judge did also allow them to get in other videotape that shows Baldwin handling that weapon in a very cavalier manner. And I think what they're going to try to argue is, listen, this was a building problem, that he had a general attitude towards safety on the set. They have evidence that apparently he was distracted many times, making phone calls to family members when he should have been paying attention to safety protocols. They're going to try to say that, listen, all of this culminated in a tragedy that was waiting to happen. If that will be a convincing argument, we'll have to see. I think they have a difficult road ahead of them, and with this new ruling, it became even more difficult.
Right after the shooting, Alec Baldwin was very public about what happened. He did a sit-down interview about this. Now that he's standing trial quickly here, do you think that these interviews are going to come back to haunt him?
I think that they are. I think that his attorneys, when he decided to make those interviews, were probably pulling out their hair. As a criminal defense attorney, you don't want your client saying anything that he doesn't need to before a trial. And so now the problem will be is if he decides to take the stand himself, because now they're cornered into that very specific narrative that he didn't pull the trigger. And we know that the prosecution has evidence that that weapon could not be fired without the trigger being pulled. So how is he going to handle that, especially if he decides to take the stand? So usually the defense wants to be able to pivot and respond to the prosecution, but now they have their own narrative set from those statements that he made.
Yeah, to your point, still so many questions. We'll have to wait and see whether or not he testifies in his own defense here. Joshua Ritter, thanks so much.